So we have the Austrian High Enlightenment continued. Joseph II attempted to reform more aspects of society later in his reign. These included um, marriage in 1783 became a civil contract instead of a religious one, thus reducing the power of the clergy even more and making the citizens under the state instead of a contract to the clergy. He abolished 600 monk orders. This was quite similar to how Henry VIII abolished a lot of the church lands and confiscated them. What this basically does is it gives the state quite a bit of land and territory to then sell off to the peasantry, thus being able to get more and more money in taxes. So, for the most part, it's an okay decision. Um, Changes in the legal and penal codes extended the power of the state into areas previously controlled by local officials and nobles. This decreased regional autonomy. If one noble was angry with the family, he could impose, before now, he could have imposed his own set of rules and moral codes. This was completely abolished, and it's now state legal and penal codes. The death penalty was abolished. Inheritance law was revised to guarantee equal shares between male and female heirs, and child labor was prohibited for those under the age of 9. Now, these were all pretty significant because these were all enlightened ideas, right? And they were pretty far into the Enlightenment. So this was a completely new concept for Austria. Something Joseph also did was he tried to promote native industry. And this was done by imposing heavy duties on 200 imported products. So this was basically to try to increase domestic manufacturers. Products imported from Hungary were subject to the same duties. This made the Hungarian nobles actually pay something to the state, since before then, the Hungarian nobles paid almost no other taxes towards meeting the expenses of the state. And lastly, domestic monopolies were abolished. This was basically to try to promote smaller manufacturers instead of having one individual control all of the wealth. And one of the major things was that serfdom was abolished. Now, serfs were a class of citizens who were basically lower than peasants, but they had very few rights. Their living conditions were atrocious, and they were in a horrific condition. So to completely abolish the serfdom really decreased the power of the nobility, who had for upwards of like 300 years by now had exploited these poor serfs. But due to the enlightened ideas, all men were equal. So now we get into one of the main things, enlightened absolutism. Now, Joseph II became one of the enlightened absolutists. There were a few during his time. Some of these are included Friedrich the Great of Prussia and Catherine II of Russia. The government was an absolute monarchy. Therefore, the monarch held complete and total control over the lives of his subjects. This was previously achieved by taking control of religion, as seen through Henry VIII and Louis XIV. Now, the Enlightened thinking created a new style of this form of government that included more acceptance and tolerance of other religions and a higher living quality for most of the peasantry. Enlightened absolutists believed in equality for their subjects. Therefore, many of the rulers dismantled the serf system. Friedrich the Great tried to dismantle serfdom. Catherine II tried to dismantle serfdom. And they were successful to varying degrees, as we'll see later.